When is the last time that you truly wanted something? That you allowed yourself to feel your full desire, to really dream, even if you didn't get it? See, fundamentally, your desire is a very powerful creative force. Think about the fundamental desire to be alive at all. For example, a newborn baby that takes his first breath and is full of life, full of desire to be alive. That's really what makes a healthy baby. And we have the same in our life now. Think about your desire to create, your desire to make a change, to show yourself, or whichever desire it may be. In a way, we could say that desire is your fundamental life energy. And especially in your adolescence, it's super important to be in touch with that creative force because you're now in this phase of adolescence where you're just coming out of this rigid school system, stepping into your creative autonomy, and really for the first time you're able to determine your own life path. It's absolutely critical that you're in touch with your desires because this is your life force energy. This is the thing that is able to set your direction. And if you're not in touch with your own desires and are not creating from that place, then most likely you'll become a leaf that's blowing in the wind of other people's desires. Just looking at my own life, I see the importance of being in touch with my desire and the power it has in creating the kind of life that I want. For example, just recently, I got in touch with this deep desire of mine to have a stable place to live. I've been hopping around for a couple of years from place to place, and I really felt the desire to be grounded in a place for a longer period of time that I can call my own. And just by acknowledging that desire, getting in touch with it, I was able to quite magically create my own house that I just bought. Or, for example, the deep desire that I felt some years ago to create my own career. I really was in touch with the fact that I wanted to have my own career path with my own creative autonomy to do something that's meaningful to me, that creates an impact in the way that I want. And even though it took a couple of years of creating, by stepping into that desire, I was able to create this beautiful place of abundance that I am in right now. Or I think back a couple of years to the point that I was really desiring a partner that was able to meet me on the same level that I was in, to fully communicate, to express, and go on a beautiful journey together. And by stepping in that desire, I was able to bring that partner into my life, and now I have a beautiful relationship. So even though there's a lot more nuance to this creative process than only desire, we can definitely start to see that desire is a very fundamental, primary step in creating the kind of life that we want. Now, there are three main attitudes that we can have when it comes to desire. The first one being suppression, the second one being dependence, and the third one being centered. So let me take you through these three different approaches. So let's take a look at the first one, suppression. So when we've suppressed our desires, we are actually no longer in touch with what we truly want. This can have happened a variety of different ways. So maybe throughout our childhood, we were demonized or conditioned to suppress that desire. We're told that whatever desire is truly alive in you is not valid and that you should hide it, to even get accepted maybe by your parents or by society. Or maybe it was too painful to desire something because your desires were never being met. And at some point, consciously or unconsciously, you said to yourself, you know what, let me just suppress this desire because it's too painful to even really feel it. It doesn't really matter in which way it happened, But when our desires are suppressed, we're not able to even feel them and be in touch with that creative life force that's inside of us. And even though maybe at some point in our lives this was a good survival strategy to suppress this desire, it really is tragic when we're not in touch with our creative desires because it really kills our life flow. It doesn't allow us to step into this creative autonomy. And in the end, it makes our life really dull and gray. So let's talk about how we can reclaim and re-own and integrate our suppressed desires. See, we all have suppressed desires in different areas of our lives. It's more about the gradations and the areas in which they are suppressed. So, this is relevant for all of us. And it's really powerful to start to ask ourselves the question again, what do I really desire? And this process of integration really is that. It's allowing ourselves again to desire. This desire is a very natural flow within us. And really, to suppress it, it takes a lot of energy to do so. But it will probably require some internal digging to start to find it again because we might have hidden our desires away so far. So, to get in touch with our desire, it really is this process of going inwards, starting to feel, and starting to honestly ask ourselves that question of what do I truly want? And when we start to do this slowly but surely, maybe in the beginning the desire is a little shy, but slowly but surely the desire will start to show itself again to you if you're able to fully integrate it and allow it to come up. When we start to own our desire, one of two things may happen. The first thing that may happen is that it just naturally starts to feel very empowering. Often, this is what happens. We tap into our desires and we start to feel them, and wow, what a creative force is unleashed in us. And that's really the ideal scenario. Now, what may also happen is when we start to dig into our desires, is that first some pain may come up, or some fear, or some sadness, or whatever is surrounded by our desires. See, usually when we have suppressed our desires, we have done that for a good reason. So some traumatic event or something may come up when we start to tap into our desires. If this is the case, when this is the case, it's really key to not panic, but to stay centered with it, feel whatever is coming up, breathe through it, and slowly but surely allow that desire to flow once again. And this process of owning your desire in the end will be super empowering. And this is what you'll feel. When you've truly integrated your desire, it will start to feel, you'll start to feel more powerful, you'll start to feel more alive, and the life itself will start to feel more colorful. So that was the first attitude towards desire, suppression. And we now talked about how to start to integrate those suppressed desires. Now, the second attitude towards desire is what I would call dependence. So, this is when we have integrated our desire. We can fully feel our desire. However, we're very attached to the outcome of it. So, yes, we can feel that we want all these things, but we also really start to need them. So, it's almost like we're becoming a slave to our desires. So it will start to feel like I need this to be true. I need this to be in my life, or otherwise I'm unfulfilled. And this is also why so many traditions have demonized desire and said, hey, it's better to just suppress the desire because otherwise we'll get into this rat race of needing to fulfill our desires, which, yeah, really can be a destructive force in our life as well. So that's the second attitude that we can have to desire is yes, we have integrated it, we can feel it, but now we have become dependent on the external world to fulfill our desires. So there must be a better way than these two ways to deal with our desires, right? That's where the third attitude comes in. This is what I would call centered desire. So, in the centered way of desiring, we fully allow ourselves to feel our desires. We let that creative life flow energy move through us without any obstruction. And at the same time, we have let go of the attachment of it needing it to be true. This is when we sit back and enjoy the process of even desiring itself and being fulfilled in the desire without it necessarily being true. Now, that doesn't mean that we cannot go about creating. We definitely can, and we definitely will use that desire as a creative force. It's just that we have the desire instead of the desire having us. So when we have our desire in a centered way, we can definitely ask people around us to fulfill our desires. We can definitely take action. It's just that we don't necessarily need to. And owning and claiming our desires in this centered way, a powerful phrase is to say, hey, I really want this, whatever it may be, whichever desire you have, to say, I really want this. I would love for this to be true. I would love to have this in my life. And if it's not there, I'm also okay. And the counterintuitive thing that you'll find when you start to approach your desires in this way is that actually they will come into your life a lot easier. Just think about whenever you feel people around you being really attached to their desires, they want something from you. It's actually that here that we start to get this resistance to giving people what they want, right? Because they feel like, oh, if I give this person what they want once, I'll get into this codependent relationship with them, and that's really not what we want. So actually, when we have someone that's truly owning their desires, they say, hey, I would really like this, but if you're not able to give it to me, that's fine. I might create it in another way. I might let it go. I don't really mind. I just would really love this. That's really a powerful place to create from. That's the place where your desires will actually be able to come into your life in an easy and effortless way. So, to summarize these three different mindsets, I have an example from my own life. See, when I was young, I really loved money. I can remember that I was playing with money when I was young, and it was such a joy. Honestly, I love to save money. I would count my money every evening. I would even play with it in ways that sometimes I would love to have it in just all coins and have a big stack of money. And sometimes I would love to have, big bills and feel like I was rich in that way. And this desire for money was also a key motivator for me to be entrepreneurial. When I was young, I was doing all these funny things of creating lotteries, for example, for the people around me, and I had my own little massage practice, and I even started at school a small cafeteria where I would, buy a cake and then cut it up into many different pieces and start to sell it. And of course, there were different desires that were fueling that, but definitely my desire for money was one of them. And in a way, this was beautiful. However, if I would categorize it in these three ways, I would say it was the second category of being dependent. See, I was so in the flow of creating that. Also, if I didn't get what I wanted, just like a kid does, I would start to cry, for example. And I really had this dependent relationship of needing the money to be there. Still, in a way, it was a lot more of a fulfilling relationship with money that I had than what I started to do later on in my life. Later on, I actually started to suppress this desire for money with the ideas and conditioning of, I want to be good and I shouldn't need money and I should be, independent from money and really I should be making an impact without needing anything in return. So in that way, I actually start to suppress my desire to have money and to have financial well-being. And I can tell you from that place, it's really hard also to have any money, because literally, even if people start to offer you money, you might resist it, you might suppress it. So this suppressed way of dealing with money is definitely also not the way to go. So the mindset that I'm embodying now is the third way of being centered with money. So I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and we would call it grounded abundance. Grounded abundance being, yes, I can fully allow my desire for money to be there. Yes, I want to have financial well-being, and I want it in a balanced way. So I can fully feel my desire, and if it's not there in this moment, if I have a couple slow months, then I can let that go. And yes, I can ask for money, but I don't have to necessarily control my environment to give it to me. Rather, I'm just standing in my desire and taking appropriate action in a balanced and nuanced way to allow it to flow into my life. So, this is a more practical, personal example of how you can go through these three different stages with your desire. So, now that you have an understanding of the power of desire, the different attitudes that you can have towards desire, I really invite you to go inwards and start to ask yourself these questions of, what is it that I truly desire? And start to allow those desires to fuel you, to start to motivate you, whilst letting go of the attachment of all of them coming true, but rather in a centered way, starting to own that desire and starting to own your own creative life force, especially in this phase where starting to create your own path is absolutely key. So, thanks for tuning in. Definitely do let me know any topics that you would like me to cover. And I wish you a lot of enjoyment in creating your desires. And I'll see you soon.